it was like, okay, we have this diagnosis, but now what? Like, what am I supposed to do? We want people that are dealing with this to understand there's resources available, that they can do this and still care for their loved one. My mother-in-law dealt with it, and I wouldn't wish that on my own worst enemy. Very, very emotional to see how many people have dealt with it, and that's just a small portion in Springfield. And so I would love for everybody listening to think about this. They may not always remember your name, but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
Welcome to In Good Company, Elder Care in Your Backyard, the podcast that brings local perspective on aging, caregiving, and healthcare right to your ears. I'm John Ray.
And I'm Spencer Ernst. Every week we talk with the people on the front lines, all making elder care accessible to you.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to In Good Company podcast. This is a podcast that focuses on elder care. So if you have a family member or, you're getting older, if you're a clinician that works in elder care, this is definitely the podcast for you. Our mission is to help people develop a plan and advocate for the elderly in our area. Growing old in the U.S. is difficult as it is. Growing old, period, is difficult as it is. But growing up in the U.S. can be really challenging. And we want to protect people's wellness and their financials. And so we want to do everything we can. And that's what this is about. So if you know somebody who you think might benefit from this, please subscribe, like, share with them. And that way they can start preparing for anything that comes along.
That's right, John. And what's really exciting about this podcast is that we get to sit down one-on-one with the experts in healthcare and elder care to really clear up some of the confusion when it comes to, elder care, hospice, home care, those sort of things. Because as you know, laws and rules are always changing year after year. And so we're going to try to break down those mysteries and help answer those questions for you and your family. Paul Morrison is a financial advisor with Edward Jones in Ozark, Missouri, where he helps families with estate and legacy planning, retirement savings, insurance, and charitable giving. Known for his personal approach, Paul is dedicated to helping individuals and caregivers prepare for their future with confidence and clarity. He is also active in community efforts, including Edward Jones' national sponsorship of the Walk to End Alzheimer's. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
So, Paul, let me help us understand what Edward Jones really is.
So Edward Jones is a financial institution that's been around in business since 1922, so 103 plus years, and they're stationed out of St. Louis, Missouri. So a lot of people don't realize they're a Missouri-based company, but they are a financial advising firm that provides information about different ways that you can invest your funds so that they will grow and be able to be utilized by you as you need based upon your specific goals. Because that's the key. Is many times financial institutions, they want to create a cookie cutter approach and hope that you can fit in a lane. Here at Edward Jones, we actually take that personal approach and we say, what are your goals? How do we help you get there? And let's build a plan around that. And then that's how we are able to build those custom plans for our clients.
So are there lots of different plans out there for different folks?
Absolutely. And good question. Not only are there savings types of plans, things that you would say are a savings account like you might have at a bank, but there's also retirement savings accounts. So IRA plans, we help businesses with their own SEP, simple, or 401k plans. We also have estate and legacy planning. So we're helping clients that are thinking about what's that next thing after retirement? What are we going to have those funds do? Heaven forbid something happens to us. What are those funds going to do, and how are they going to best serve the people that I want them to serve after my time? So that's how we're helping our clients. So.
Do you advise on other things outside of investment?
No, I mean, we do provide thoughts on any type of things that are going to help your estate. So for example, sometimes we'll give some advice on the fact that we would recommend that people go and have a conversation with an attorney to determine trust and wills and estates and those types of things, because those are important. Many times I tell my clients, do you want to pay the attorney now or do you want to pay him later? the questions you're going to pay, or the answer to that is you're going to pay them either way, and you can pay them now and your expenses are a lot cheaper and you get to choose what happens to your funds and the things that you own that you've worked so hard and saved for. Or you can pay them later, their expenses are going to be a lot higher. And not only that, they and the judge are going to determine where your funds and all the things that you've worked so hard to accumulate are going to go.
I'm trying to read between the lines here.
Yeah.
Are you speaking to someone who may not be able to speak for themselves at that point?
Edward Jones, we do work with families in instances where we have those that are no longer capable of making decisions on their own. But the hope is before it gets to that point, they've already laid the foundation. They have powers of attorney in place. They have things like that. So should the need arise that they have someone to be able to act on their behalf and be able to transact in their account, those are the things that we are hopeful and are encouraging them to have in place before we get to that scenario. And unfortunately, in my position, I see both sides, right? I see those that have done the work and have prepared accordingly, those that haven't, unfortunately, and to see the struggles that they have to go through and hoops that are there meant for their protection, but are still hurdles and roadblocks to make sure that they're the ones acting on the proper behalf of that client. And it can take literally weeks and things for them to do things on behalf that they're trying to do for their loved one that they just don't have the access to do right away.
We recently had an elder law attorney on, and she did an amazing job of kind of outlining some of these things, but we didn't really talk about assets and when you're talking about you're getting to see some of the hoops that they're having to jump through. Can you describe what some of those hoops are?
Some of those hoops are, again, if there's no power of attorney in place and mom or dad or family loved one, they go into a state where they're incapable of making those decisions, then those funds get locked up basically because they're in that person's name. And until an attorney or someone verifies and can deem a appropriate power of attorney for that person, those funds are there that could be used for their care right now, but are actually tied up because they can't make that decision and there was no power of attorney in place. So once that power of attorney gets in place, then those funds and things can do what they're supposed to do. But it's all dependent upon how quickly it goes through that process. And a lot of times people try to take into account the need for an immediate attention. So they'll try to make exceptions to get things pushed through on a faster process. But you think about that on a scale in the county of even Christian County, how many times does that happen per day, per week? And so sometimes there's a rush on a lot of different things. And unfortunately, you might be on the back end of that, where yours is the last to go through that process. And again, it could take weeks, months, depending upon the situation and how long it takes them to get that through.
So when you say things get locked up from a practical standpoint, how does that like play out? And, when somebody's needing access to that?
If someone has an account and that account is in their name only, and they have not previously had a power of attorney in place, those funds are in their account. And yes, they're still maybe working and growing for them, but they can't access them because they're not capable of making that decision. And since no one is been deemed as power of attorney, then no one can step in and say, this person, my loved one, who they've deemed me as power of attorney, is currently battling some health issues. We need to get access to those funds to help pay for their care. They can't do that without that power of attorney. So they're, in essence, locked up in that account, in that person's name. Again, they're not going anywhere, and they will be there when that person hopefully gets back to their cognizant self to be able to do that. But until then, they're locked there until a power of attorney gets in place.
And so I'm assuming that just kind of thinking of bills that need to be paid and how those bills are going to get paid unless they're on auto pay or something,
Right.
or a credit card on file or something. You could wind up in a situation where rent's not paid, insurance isn't paid, critical things that
Right.
need to be taken care of just
Mhm.
aren't available. How long, I mean, have you seen these things get tied up?
I mean, I've seen instances where it can literally be 3 to 6 months, as far as
Wow, that's a long time.
most instances, if there's an immediate need, like I say, they try to push them through. But even in those immediate needs, it can be 2 to 3 weeks before they have that access. And so I've seen loved ones thankfully step in and maybe pay for those bills for a period of time with the understanding that eventually we'll get access to those funds and hopefully I get paid back. But most of the time, that's what happens is a loved one has to step in place and make sure they've even reached out to those organizations, let them know, hey, our loved one is going through a rough time. Here's what's happened. We're trying to get everything that we can in place to get you, paid. But it is a process that you can't just step in and start making those payments on their behalf. So it takes some time.
Wow. This seems to be a recurring theme that we're running
Mhm,
into. Several of our guests circle back to power of attorney and how important it is and how you
mhm.
have to deem that power of attorney and make sure that paperwork's in place to keep all these bad things from happening.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of decisions have to be made relatively quickly, and that can get really slowed down being part of a natural process too. And those processes are there to protect individuals so that they aren't taken advantage of or whatever. But boy, it sure helps a family out when you've got somebody that you can trust.
That's correct. And one thing at Edward Jones, of course, we're not attorneys, so we can't build or generate those trust or wills. But once a trust is in place, we can actually create a trust account and then have those funds go into that account. And then, based upon that trust and those trustees and those that are authorized for that, are able to then um, generate and transact in that trust account. So
So there's power of attorney, and then there's an actual trust. Can you speak to how that's different for people?
yeah. So a trust is basically a way, and I'm sure those that you've had from the attorney side may have mentioned some of it, but it's basically you're identifying what you want to have happen to your assets, everything that you've worked hard to generate and to own. What do you want to have happen to those? And a trust allows you to be specific. If you say, hey, I want grandma's curio cabinet to go to, child A, then that's in the trust so that they know at the time of that person's passing, the curio cabinet goes to person A. And the rest of it might be divided equally. And in that case, if there's a house or those type of things, those things are sold and then those assets are divided according to how that is listed in the trust. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize and understand there are two different types of trust, irrevocable and revocable. Most people will have a revocable trust. So, in the event that they want to make changes from time to time, they can go do that. They just simply revise the trust based upon a specific need that they have. If they're trying to do some instance where they don't want to make any additional changes and they want to set it in stone now, they can do that in an irrevocable trust, and that's set in stone from that regard, and it cannot be modified or changed. So even if the person's still living and says, "Oh my goodness, Johnny, son Johnny is now someone that I wouldn't want to give those things to." If it's already set in place, it's irrevocable, so it cannot be changed at that point.
Why would somebody pick an irrevocable
Sometimes,
trust?
yeah, that's a great question. Sometimes people pick that because they may have a living spouse currently, and that spouse says, hey, this is how we want to make this decision together while we're still able and capable. Sometimes there is some taxation components, and I don't know all that side, but there's some taxation components and issues that are helpful having it in one versus the other. So just making sure when you're having your conversations with your attorneys and professionals in that area, that you truly understand what type of arrangement are we creating in this trust. Is this a revocable or an irrevocable? And then have them explain those to you in detail.
Okay. So when you're advising, if somebody's getting closer to retirement age, as they're getting closer and closer, um, obviously there's, conservative versus aggressive types of investment,
Mhm.
but but there's also tax savings strategies around, if they've have a pre-tax versus a post-tax, or
Mhm.
and there's also HSAs and a lot of
Mhm.
different. Can you speak to any of those?
All I can say with regard to those, yes, those are all components that are part of your financial strategy. What we do is we actually welcome a conversation with not only our client, what are your specific goals, but then we welcome the conversation with their CPA or their person that's helping guide them with regard to their taxation. So, what we want is to build a plan that's going to be what they need it to be. If they need that extra tax help and those types of things, or want to make sure that's in place, we want to have a conversation with their CPA to say, hey, how can we, through the investments that they have available to them, help them meet that goal of trying to eliminate or minimize the taxes that go with it. And there's plenty of tools to do that. There's many of ways, but each individual's situation will be different and what they're trying to accomplish will be different. And that's where Edward Jones shines, is we will actually have that sit down conversation. We'll discuss what those goals are. Then we'll have conversations with not just them, but their professionals to build that custom plan that's going to help them meet their needs. That's the beauty and the power of Edward Jones.
And if they walk through your door and they don't have that team put together, does Edward Jones make referrals?
We have thoughts and recommendations on getting those people into place. And at Edward Jones, we don't partner with any organizations outside of Edward Jones. But if there are people that our clients have used or would recommend, or our partners in our communities, those types of things, we will offer multiple suggestions for them to be able to seek out, and we'll give them guidance on what some things that we would recommend they look for. But they'll be able to make a decision on their own who they wish to choose to partner with. So
You have personal experience as a caregiver,
yes.
and I'm going to kind of switch gears here away from
Hmm.
investing to your own story related to your family.
Sure.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yes. We cared for my mother-in-law, Peggy, for 4 years in our home. That was a decision. My wife, came and said, hey, mom's been diagnosed. And, we didn't know what all that meant at the time. She didn't know, my wife didn't know what that meant. And so we were basically trying to determine what's the best thing for her. My wife and I and our kids got in a room together and we said, hey, here's the situation. Grandma's going through some health issues. And, for our kids, grandma's probably not going to be the same grandma that, you've grown up knowing. Over time. She's going to, forget things. She's going to, maybe say things that aren't appropriate, those type of things. And we brought that to the kids' attention and said, are you guys on board of helping us take care of grandma? And all of them were in agreement. Yes, we want to do this. And we understand that it means work. And we understand that it means that, grandma is going to show signs of change and we're going to be on board with helping. And so I think for the caregiver, primary caregiver, my wife, who was playing wife, mother, she was still a teacher at the school, and all of those things, having church and everything else going on, it was overwhelming for her to think, how do I go about trying to accomplish this? And thankfully, she had some friends that heard, about resources that were available in the community, and she sought those out and started hearing other people's stories and ways that they found access to resources. And so over time she built was a way for us to have care in our home 24 hours a day. When we weren't there, we had volunteers that were coming in just to sit with her. She was thankfully not someone that was prone to wander, but things like, just making sure she didn't fall or, those types of things. And so we would just have caregivers come into the house and sit, have a conversation with her. And then when we would come home, then of course we were at our care. Some things that, were always challenges is, okay, when we as a family need to go to a ball game, what do we do there? And, we made a decision that we were going to care for grandma regardless. We weren't going to put life on hold and not do the things that our family needed to do or loved to do. And so what we did, and it meant a little bit of preparation and ahead of time, is we would go out and go to ball games and those types of things. We would have little business cards that my wife had written up, and on those business cards, it would simply say, "Thank you for your time today. Just wanted to let you know our mother is dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia. Should she say something inappropriate or offend you in any way, we ask that you please extend her some grace." And when we would come to somebody, we would reach over, shake their hand, hand them a card. They would take the card and read it, and you would see immediately everybody has known somebody that's gone through this.
Yeah.
And so the demeanor of that person would immediately change, and you could see grace immediately, in their voice, in their actions, and those types of things. And so it made it okay for grandma to come to church with us and in the middle of a prayer say, "I'm bored," or, "I didn't like that song," and you would just love to feel the touches of people next to you that understood. We know what you're going through,
Yeah.
and you're still doing the right thing. And so it was grateful to have those tools. And so that's what we want to share with everybody else. We want to want people that are dealing with this to understand there's resources available, that they can do this and still care for their loved one. But primarily and most importantly, what Edward Jones is trying to do, and I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to find a way to not have us deal with this. So, my mother-in-law dealt with it, and I saw my mother-in-law, who was the life of the party, who was smiles all the way around, come to a point where she was combative and defensive and those types of things. And it was, hard to see that. I wouldn't wish that on my own worst enemy, but we have ways of being able to help with that. And we want to continue to do the things to find a cure for that. And so that's what I'm excited about doing, because I know my wife struggles with, what if that happens to me? But it's not just her. What if that happens to me? How would that happen? How would she then have to not only have cared for her mom, but, maybe me someday? And so want to try to make it to the point where we don't have to deal with Alzheimer's anymore.
And so when you say that, how are you contributing to that, I guess?
One of the many reasons I'm here at Edward Jones is they are the world's largest sponsor for supporting Alzheimer's. They've been doing it since 2016 and have already raised over $54 million towards the cause. And it's not just support and resources, but it's the research as well to try to help find a cure. And we realize at Edward Jones, there's currently over 300,000 of our own clients that are dealing with this. And they've worked so hard, and we've worked hard with them to help them build what they need to help them have a good retirement. And now we would hate to see that go in areas or ways that they weren't intending for them to go. We want them to be able to be prepared and ready for those things should they happen. But the hope is that they, are able to enjoy what they've worked so hard to do. So that's why Edward Jones has made it a passion. after dealing with my mother-in-law, that's why I've made it a passion. Each Edward Jones region, I think you'll probably notice it feels like there might be an Edward Jones office on every corner. And that really is intentional. It's what Edward Jones and his son Ted Jones, they were based out of course, St. Louis. And what Ted Jones would do would actually sell bonds and CDs and things from the trunk of his car. He would drive from St. Louis to Macon, Missouri, Mexico, Missouri, some of these small farm towns, and sell those things out of the trunk of his car because he realized what people want is that personal touch. They want to be able to go in and have a conversation. What's the best thing for me to do? And why is it the best thing? Not just the what is, it's why. They want to be educated. And so this is why there's so many offices, is because we want to create a way, an easy way for people to come to us. And what you realize is not every office has just that specific community's clients. Sometimes their branches are from other areas of their influence where they might have family, friends, and loved ones that are also seeking their advice that are not here in the community. And so all of that to say, we want to have those conversations. We want to determine how we can best help. And so by doing that, Edward Jones has had Region 98. I've become the coordinator for Region 98 for the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which is in Springfield. It has its own walk. That's coming up in a couple of weeks on the 27th of September. The registration starts at 8:30. Then there's a ceremony that's at 9:45, and then the walk actually kicks off at 10. If you're listening to this and you want to figure out how can I best either help or get resources, that's a great place to start. You are able to go and interact with people that are currently dealing with it or have dealt with it in the past. Very, very emotional to see how many people have dealt with it, and that's just a small portion in Springfield. And so I really encourage you, if you haven't, you don't have to pay anything to walk. You just need to sign up and let them know that you'll be there, and come out and support that. And it would be a great resource for you.
We definitely support that as well. And thanks for that plug, because we want to share that as much with everyone as we possibly can. Let me circle it back to your personal situation. There's stages to this. You know, when you first get diagnosis and you realize we need to make a plan, and then you talked a little bit about some of the things that you guys did to try to help communicate with the community that, you know, you wanted mom to be a part of your activities and as things progressed. But there are other stages that go beyond that. What resources or what things did you guys do as things progressed? And if you can describe what progressed or how it progressed.
Yeah. So that was the thing that my wife really struggled with, is when they left the doctor's office, it was like, okay, we have this diagnosis, but now what? Like, what am I supposed to do? Where are the resources? How do I get them? Who offers them? All of those things that don't come with that diagnosis. And so really looking for those things. There's alz.org, ALZ.org, that you can go. It has a 24-hour hotline. So if you're battling with this with somebody, go use that hotline. They'll be able to provide resources. If you just need somebody to talk to, that's what they're there for as well. Somebody to just bounce ideas off of and think through things. But it has a wealth of knowledge and resources that are free and available. You can look up by community. Sometimes each individual community or city offers specific things. And so that was something my wife learned through this process is, okay, there's other things, not just at the state level, there's things at the community level, there's things at our city level, and so through that process, been able to identify ways of helping to care for somebody that's going through that. What is critical is what we watched with her mom is it was a slow degradation process. One of the key things that I learned from this is, and I would love for everybody listening to think about this, they may not always remember your name, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. So through that process, we would see my mother-in-law as caregivers would come in, those that greeted her with bright smiles and energy and care, she lit up like a Christmas tree and was ready for, any interaction that that person was provide. If the person came in with, a little bit of doom and gloom and a very lackadaisical approach, then she adopted that same, approach and those types of things. So when you're caring, remember, I know it's not always easy and it gets very frustrating, but always know and understand that it's how you make them feel. You bring the weather. So you can choose it to be a sunny day or you can choose it to be a gloomy day. And so through that process, those resources, getting back to the question, as my mother-in-law was getting further and further into, we started to notice those things, like I say, combativeness that was never, ever, ever anything that we ever, dealt with. And so those challenges meant we need to determine, what do we do now? What is that stage and how do we help in that stage? I remember my wife always saying to us, because it would get frustrated if we just had a conversation with her and she doesn't remember it. And it's just like, or if she called us somebody else, my wife would say, just go to their world,
Yeah.
and say, yes, hey, how's it going? And interact with regard to that. And through that process, what the truth is. You're just helping them live through that difficult stage of life where they don't know what truth is. And so you're helping them as long as you're keeping them safe, obviously. That's the main thing. But as that progressed, she got to the point where we were then saying, and I told my wife this at the very beginning, I said, you're going to know when it's time. And when it's time, it's okay. And what that meant is you're going to know when you can't, you just can't do it anymore. And it's okay.
Yeah.
The point is, we gave her mom 4 of the most wonderful years. And I am fully convinced she would not have been here that long had she not had the care and the love from us through that process. So Alzheimer's is that long goodbye, but what a great opportunity. There were still many times that we laughed and she did remember things, and I wouldn't trade any of those for the world. Our kids learned a great and valuable lesson about caring for those that can't always care for themselves. And whether that's, elderly or young children or whoever, anyone with a disability, the point is, this world's bigger than us, and we've been asked to love one another and care for one another. And so that was a great, valuable lesson that our kids saw. But what we would have robbed them had we not done that and provided a place for my mother-in-law to go.
And forgive me because I don't know the whole story.
Yeah.
After the 4 years, was she at home or did she go to a different level of care?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it got to the point where, because she was getting so combative, my wife said, I can't subject the kids to this. Sometimes she would think that she told them something and she didn't, and she would get agitated that they didn't respond. And so my wife said, okay, we need more help.
Right.
And it's not something and we knew that we had volunteer caregivers coming in, and we didn't want them to have to deal with that. But I'll just caution, through that process, once they get to that combative stage, if anyone that has cared for her have listed that as a tendency, it can be harder to get placement for that person into a facility. And so always being mindful and cognizant of what the next potential stages are, have a plan in place. And it has to be your plan. And what I would recommend is talk to your team, the team that's helping you care
Right.
for that person. And all of you work together to build that plan to know that once that next step happens, we know what we're going to do. But once she got placed, which took a while because she was combative, there were several organizations, nursing facilities that would not take her. There was instances where we finally found one that would consider, but they required her to go through a psychiatric evaluation, which then that meant they were putting her on medications and those types of things to decrease the likelihood of that, which then kind of put her more into a vegetative state in essence because of not just that specific medication that she was having, but all the others that she was having to take as well. So through that process, she went into a full-time nursing facility, and she was living there for about 6 months before she succumbed to the death of Alzheimer's. So
Was she placed on hospice?
she was for about a week.
Okay.
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
Yeah, we've had conversations about dementia and the progression of it and some of the issues around that. Um, there's a whole lot to unpack here, but when you're talking about chemical restraint, it is the same as a restraint, and there's a bit of controversy around those issues. But you need care, you need support, and that's one of the things I think some folks don't understand, that these stages come with goods and bads, both, and those higher levels of care are absolutely necessary. But just understanding that the timing of things can make a huge difference in access to care, and what hoops have to be jumped through. We also had someone on recently that we talked at length about like strategies that those facilities take in order to manage someone with dementia. It in my experience, that sometimes when you have someone with dementia who gets agitated, you have to have somebody who's going to look as a detective, to look for hungry, angry, lonely, tired. All of are they getting enough stimulus? Are they getting enough activity? Have we exhausted everything we can to avoid medications and that sort of thing? And these are extremely difficult things for people to do. It's easy for me to sit here and say, let's look at everything, but each situation is so unique. But I think it's good for the community to understand being an advocate for someone, especially with dementia, can be really challenging because for a lot of people, it's their first time dealing with it and that sort of thing. And so plugging in to some sort of support somewhere. Can you speak to how your family plugged into support, maybe where somebody might reach? I know you mentioned the Alzheimer's Association as a place. Were there other areas, or?
When we were having my mother-in-law lived with us, we were in the Kansas City area at that time, and there was some resources. The community had what was called break time, and it was at the community center. And at that community center on every Thursday, they would allow people that were working with and caring for people with Alzheimer's and dementia to be able to bring them to the facility and drop them off for about 2.5 hours. They fed them. They did exercises with them. They usually had some sort of musical entertainment. And for 2.5 hours, that caregiver got to go be by themselves, run errands if they needed to, go take a nap if they needed, whatever it is that they needed to be able to give them that time. And a lot of times there were, resources like buses, Oats buses or different things like that could actually even take them there and drop them off and pick them up and those types of things. Because like I say, my wife is a school teacher. So, she was obviously in school. I was working full time. Our kids were in school. So, having those things set up where people were able to help, that's a great community. Is just looking in your own place of where you live, what resources are available. But I won't downgrade how much of an impact it is to have the spheres of contacts outside of that organization. So we relied heavily on our church. People would volunteer and say, hey, if your normal volunteer that's somebody that's just donating their time to come in and sit with your mom, if they suddenly fall through, they're sick today, now what does my wife do? Does she take a day off school, which she had to do plenty of times? Or what she would do is she sent out a mass text to our church family, to our neighbors, and just say, is anybody able to go spend a couple hours with mom today? And through that process, people would say, yeah, I can go, spend a couple hours. And so through that, it was a huge community effort. It wasn't just us that were able to care for her. It really did take a village. And what was awesome is you get to know your community and the people around you even that much more through this process, because you realize the hearts that they have in caring for one another, the time that they donated to help with us through that process. So I would highly recommend, if you're involved in a church, that's a great resource. And then not only that, of course, your neighbors, as we mentioned, and then any other family and friends. What we would do with my mother-in-law is we thought we had a great plan in place where we would say, hey, to my wife's sister and brother, hey, we're going to send grandma to you for a couple weeks. And they were okay with it. Yes, let's send her to us. We didn't realize at the very beginning how that really messed up grandma. Like grandma
yeah.
doesn't recognize where she's at, and so then it becomes really hard for them to care for grandma, because grandma's trying to figure things out and she might be up and agitated and those type of things. So very quickly, after a couple instances of trying that, we realized that's not the best. So what we did is we said, hey, come to our house, stay at our house for 2 weeks. We're going to go on a vacation, or we're going to go do something. And then that process was much simpler because she was in an environment that she knew and understood and felt comfortable in, and that allowed them to be able to care for her that much better.
Oh, great advice. I will mention, just as an aside, that there are a number of facilities that do what's called respite, and so they allow families to have their loved ones stay in a facility if they don't have access to family or neighbors or whatever that can help out. But one of the things that has always been an issue, it always is and never will change, is that when you place someone in a facility or someone else's home, it is disruptive, and but there's no way around it. Sometimes, it takes them a while to settle in, but they eventually do settle in. So if somebody's thinking, it's going to be disruptive to them permanently if they have to, long term stay in a facility. Oftentimes, they make those adjustments quite well.
Yeah, it's key. Just being open and thinking about what's going to be best for that person, because learn from our mistakes in that regard. If you have the ability and they're able to stay where they're at, finding somebody to care for them there would be great.
So, with the kids, how and things progressed. What conversations did you have with them to kind of help them through this process?
Every one of us would have days where we would be frustrated, or those type of things. And what was great is you had the others there to say, it's okay. And remember, don't get mad at grandma, get mad at the disease.
Right.
And so that, reshaped and reformed things for our kids. It didn't make it easy, but life isn't easy. And so that was what was a good education moment for them is, if we weren't there to care for grandma, and oh, by the way, remember all the fun times when grandma cared for you, don't you want to give back to grandma, through that process? And they always did. And what was really neat is, like I say, through this process, all the little blessings that you can look back on now that you don't always see at the time. An example is our daughter, who's the oldest. She was the only one that my mother-in-law would go let her take her shower, so it would be like, and what the thing is my daughter would go in and turn on the music, and she called it a shower party. Grandma, we're going to go have a shower party. But if I or my wife said, Mom, it's time to go take a shower. No, no. And again, there's something we didn't realize, the sensations that they feel, that it's not fun for them to have that, the sensory that they're going through. So we realized, hey, she doesn't like it because it doesn't make her feel good like what it used to, those types of things. And so, but when my daughter would do that, she was always game. And so we had little things each of us would do. Our middle son would play or try to play memory games with grandma. So those little faces where you turn up, faces and say, okay, can you find where the other face is and things. Even though grandma never won, it was just spending time with grandma and helping her, stay entertained and things. And just another thing is letting her tell stories. So she, for whatever reason, was very in tune to her high school days. So she loved to get out the yearbook and talk about people and what she did and what she was a part of. And sometimes those were consistent, and other times they were like, I never knew you were in the chess club, grandma, but if she thought she was, that was great. And anyway, through that process, the kids, we, had to continue to instruct them and remind them, hey, we're caring for grandma, and we know grandma to you might, say something or be a little combative or something. It's not that she's upset with you. It's her brain is changing. Yeah. And through that, they understood. And when grandma got placed into the care facility and we went to go visit her, we got to see multiple residents there that were going through, similar things, but in their own way. One of my mother-in-law's roommates was someone who was a teacher at school that was in the music program. And so she was very much where she was a mumbler and a walker and, couldn't, usually form any sort of communication. But we set her in front of a piano and she played it like she's played it all her life.
Oh my gosh.
And her kids, it was around Christmas time, and I remember our kids say, can you play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star? And like, no, you don't know what you're asking. And she paused, and lo and behold, she played it. And then it was like, well, what about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? And she would think for a bit and could play it. And it was just, that's what's so amazing about this disease, is it attacks certain parts of the brain, and other parts it doesn't attack quite as much. And so that was something, the music in the shower, somebody being able to, that's an area of the brain that doesn't get attacked. And so just remember that as well. If you're caring for somebody, having fun music that they enjoy listening to can also be a help during those difficult times.
You're absolutely right. You're not the first to mention that as a something that might resonate with them or help them at least relax and not be. I can't imagine how stressful it could be for somebody with dementia that all of a sudden doesn't know where they're at, doesn't recognize the people around them. That can be very, very stressful, and anything that links to their past sometimes can be a real treasure. So you had a transition from home to a facility. What could you say to folks at home that might be burning the candle at both ends, trying to manage a situation that's progressing? They're not really sure what to do, and they have an enormous amount of guilt around having to make that transition. They were hoping to, hold out, but they really have gotten to a stage where we have to make a decision to make a change.
Yeah. And that was what I had shared with my wife is, you're going to know when it's time, and it's okay. It's okay. And so that time is, you have to realize if you are burning the candle at both ends, are you doing the best for them,
Right.
and not just them, but everybody else in your sphere? And you can't do it all. So that's the point, is you have to be humbled to the point of understanding that we're all dependent upon one another as we go through life. And I heard a saying, and I don't remember who said it, but they said, no matter who you meet, they're going through a great battle. And we're all going through the battle of life.
Absolutely.
There's different stages. Sometimes our battle isn't as stressful, and we might be in a form of euphoria because of all the great things that are going on. But then there's sometimes we're really, really down.
Yeah.
And what just a smile will do, or a kind word can do to somebody is unbelievable. So always being mindful of those things, understand that people are going through that same thing. So if you aren't taking care of yourself, you can't always be the best advocate and caregiver of somebody who really needs that help. So understanding and realizing it's okay to reach out and ask for help. It's also okay because you're still going to be their best advocate. And so even though my mother-in-law went to a facility, it didn't mean that we didn't go there regularly,
Right.
and check on her and do those things. It didn't mean that my wife didn't have contacts there that were saying, hey, how'd mom do today? What are those types of things, to be able to understand, okay, I have to take care of these other things that are just as important in life, and my own kids and family and the students that I help at school, but I also need to care for mom. And so through that process, this was her way of being able to do it. And it does take some work on the front end to build what you're hoping with those organizations, that placement place, but having those conversations, working together, realizing that, they want to care for your loved one as much, they just need to know her, or, know about them that much more. So
Right.
the more you can share with them, the more you can spend times with them, telling them stories, those types of things, the more they'll connect with that person, and then, be able to provide even a better level of care because they're able to help them recall stories and tell those things that are going to make them more comfortable there.
Yeah, I think some people think advocating for your loved one always is like some sort of adversarial thing in the healthcare world. But honestly, what you said is perfect. Supporting those people who work in that field and helping them with arming them with information is a huge factor. And you sometimes if somebody spends any time in a memory care unit, they see these people that are just born to do this. They just naturally know they understand where they're at, and know how to meet them there quite naturally, and do a great job of making it fun and entertaining, and getting pulling out of them specific things. But the family really plays a huge role in supporting those individuals by giving them ammunition to work with.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is critical, and that's what's so neat, is we all have our own strengths, and those caregivers, I've seen that as well, that you're there and you're like, you are meant to be here,
Yeah.
and thank you for doing what you do.
Yes.
Just like we would say to, our military or anybody else in any profession, our tax preparers, like, I can't do what you do,
Yeah.
and the time that you spent doing it. So, it's being appreciative of those people that are helping care, and then, like you say, give them as much ammunition as possible to be able to provide the best care for the loved one.
So what can families expect from the upcoming evening with the experts?
Well, this is our second time providing an evening with the experts, and it's going to be in Springfield at the Hammonds Medical Center. and it's going to be in the auditorium October 23rd. It's a Thursday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. What we're doing is just basically providing an opportunity for people to get to go learn more about the disease, what's being done, where's research at today, what are caregiver resources that are currently available. It's a opportunity for them to hear from the experts. So we'll have someone at the 10,000 foot level that's talking about what's on the cutting edge, what is the medications they're working on, the things like that to be able to combat it. But then we'll take a step down and we'll have a doctor in the area who's currently helping care for those with Alzheimer's and dementia and be able to say, okay, what are you seeing in our area, in our region? Then we'll take another step down and we'll actually have somebody that's helping with the caregivers, say what resources are available and those types of things. And then what we'll have a dinner which will be provided. Edward Jones is sponsoring that. It just be an opportunity to go and hear from them. What are those things that are going on in their fields? But then what's awesome is the second half is to actually ask questions. So to hear from this panel, what's the 10,000 foot answer to that? What's the doctor level answer to that? What's the caregiver level answer to that? And be able to get all of that in one place in a 2-hour block. And we try to maximize, like I say, everyone's time there so that they can get, and more importantly, I think what people walk away with is, again, hope. Like, okay, there is work, there's things around the corner, there's things. I do know that I've got resources available to me, so I can do this and those type of things. But then the other component is, okay, now I understand a little bit better. I can go share that with others that might be struggling with this as well, and provide for them resources and things that I learned from this. And so I've always pick a nugget, from that, even that I didn't know while we were caring for my mother-in-law. And so it is something that I would recommend if you have that evening open. I think it'll be well worth your time, especially if you're working with somebody that is battling the disease.
Absolutely. And how can listeners sign up for this event?
This event currently is on the alz.org website. You can go there and approach. There is going to be limited seating, so about 250 seats. It's in an auditorium style in the Hammonds Medical Center auditorium. So I would recommend reaching out as soon as possible to get access to that information. If for some reason we get to the point where we overbook that and we see that there's an additional need, then we'll try to also have another one of those in the near future to try to make sure that those that are wanting access to that information will be able to have it. The Edward Jones team is the one that is helping to put this on sponsor, but it's also the walk committee. And so we're working with that group and the people that are volunteers in that regard to try to see if there might be a way of having that filmed to be able to be a resource that's available to all. So stay tuned. Okay. We'll see if we can provide that.
That's great. Now, are there other events in other regions that they're doing?
Every Edward Jones region has their own Walk to End Alz coordinator. I happen to be for Region 98, which stretches as north as Bolivar, as south as Branson, as west as Aurora, and as east as Rogersville. That's the region that we're in. And through that region, every region can do different things based upon what's needed in those communities, or they're involved with the walk committee, which several members, have helped with that from various different organizations, which is great. They'll come up with plans. So not only are we going to have the evening with the experts, we're going to have a fun night of kickball for alls. So we're going to do a kickball tournament.
That's a great idea.
And it's going to be in November, I believe. I'm not sure on the date, but look for that to be popping up as well. But it'll be in November, and it's an opportunity to bring a team. It can be a team of coworkers, a team of family members, anybody you want to put together, a church family. It doesn't doesn't matter. But the funds to enter that team go directly to the Walk to End Alzheimer's, and so those funds then go back to research and support and materials to be able to help those that are caring for loved ones with the disease.
Wow. What a great idea. How long has Edward Jones been involved with this?
Since 2016,
16. Okay.
and like I say, since then we have been the world's largest contributor sponsor to the Walk to End Alz. So
That's amazing. And is there a story behind why Edward Jones has gone that direction?
yeah, great question. They a couple of the senior leaders, and I know it was around 2016, they started to say, what do we need to be doing? We're doing things in the community, but what do we need to be doing on a grander scale? And they started to analyze what is the greatest threat to our clients to doing what they've been designed to do, which is try to save to be able to use to either pass on to their loved ones or to be able to save towards retirement, be able to do those things. And the biggest threat to that was their health.
Yeah.
And the fact that not only that, the amount of money that people pay to have someone live in that care, we're like, wow, that's the biggest threat to our clients right now that isn't already being addressed on a grand scale with some other large organizations. And it doesn't mean that those organizations aren't important. It's just meant that there was a gap here and nobody was doing it. And we're like, we have a direct correlation to that. So we stood up and said, yes, let's make that who we go champion around and try to help with that process. So
That's so awesome. That's so awesome. Well, we will put all this information in the show notes and make sure that people have access to it. Any final thoughts?
I just thank you again for doing this, because this is one of those resources that you don't know who's going to hear a nugget, a piece of information from not just me, any, of the people that you've had. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for offering it. Thank you for, just being another outlet to tell them what resources are available, and being an encouragement to those people in our community. So thank you for the opportunity to come. And one thing I would say, Edward Jones, I love about Edward Jones is we never charge for a conversation. So if you don't know where to even begin, if you don't know a thing about finances, come have a conversation. It's never too late to start saving.
Yeah.
And so start that process, because the earlier you start, the higher the likelihood you have of achieving your goal. So there are tools and there are ways, and we'll walk through those with you. So if ever you want to have a conversation, please reach out and we'd love to have a conversation.
Yeah, a future plan for a future podcast. Don't know when this will happen, but we would like to address, somebody who just turned 50, doesn't have a good retirement account put together. They're kind of panicking, and they're on a short window. And what are all the things that they can do to try to prepare late to retirement? Because I think there's more people out there than we know of, and we want to make sure that there's a bridge there.
Yeah. There's a statistic that I heard that said about 80% of Americans will retire with less than 75,000 saved for retirement.
Wow. That's an incredible statistic. I do know that the leading cause of bankruptcy or the drive to go onto Medicaid is related to healthcare issues. And so Edward Jones was right on the money that it is a threat to people's long-term stability, safety, security, that sort of thing. And we want to try to address all those things with this podcast to try to help people navigate this very difficult path sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and you think about our generations living longer and the baby boomers and all the, how there's going to be an influx potentially of a larger need for facilities to be able to care for those. And so I don't anticipate the cost of care to go down anytime soon. And so with thinking through that, that is going to be for a large chunk of people where their savings is going to be going. And you just want to be able to make sure you've got your things in order, because you never know. I mean, you or I could go have a car accident and need full-time care.
Yeah.
And so what does that look like? And are you prepared? And what kind of insurance do you have in place, if any? And if somebody needs to make financial decisions for you, are you prepared for that? And who would that be? And do they know about it? And all of those things,
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. Yeah. And I hope that people understand that there's so many people that are unprepared, and that is probably more normal than not.
Yeah.
And, the people who are fully prepared and have, done, checked all the boxes are actually more rare. And but it's not too late, and we've got to all work together, and you're part of that team, that community that helps people get ready, and we appreciate you for that. So
Well, it's my pleasure, and thank you again for the opportunity. And hopefully, like I say, people took some nuggets from this conversation. And again, thanks for offering it to them. So
Absolutely. And Paul, how can listeners reach you at your office?
our office is located in Ozark, Missouri. We're right off of CC Highway, right next to Mud House Coffee. A lot of people recognize that as a popular place, so we're right next to them. Our office phone number, 417-581-9330. Again, 417-581-9330. And my email address is just simply Paul and then period Morrison, Morrison, at edwardjones.com. So if I can't help you, I guarantee I probably know somebody who can. So we'll make sure that we get you taken care of. So
Paul, thank you so much. You're a great resource for our community. We hope to have you back.
thank you. Appreciate the time, and thanks for the opportunity.
Wow. It was amazing to sit down with Paul. I was really expecting, this financial planning conversation, which it was, and all of the great advocacy they do around Alzheimer's. But Paul's personal experience with his family, and I have to say that family persevered so well, and handled those situations. And when he talked about the struggles that they went through with having to transition to a higher level of care, I really felt that. I really felt for him and his family, and I was just really surprised in a good way of how detailed he got with what he was dealing with.
Absolutely. I mean, with his mother-in-law, I love the aspect that he sat down with his family and said, do we want to take care of grandma? Do we want to have her in our home? And they were so open to it. And it was just such an uphill battle year after year. And one of the biggest takeaways, and at least for me, when it comes to people with Alzheimer's, is that they're different every single day. And sometimes you have to give a little bit of a white lie to help them through day by day, because sometimes they think you're a husband. Sometimes they think that they're back in school and you're their best friend. And sometimes you have to be that persona. And that's got to take an emotional toll. I can't imagine going through something like that, because it's like day after day, you don't know what to expect. And then at what point do you say, you know what, we can't take care of grandma anymore. We can't, or,
Yeah.
or mom. What do you do in that situation? It's just, it was emotional.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth, Paul's story was very emotional.
I think that to pivot off of that, I think the biggest thing that he shared with us is that definitely don't try this alone. You need support. You need, people to bounce ideas off of. Everyone feels, probably a family sometimes feels a sense of guilt when they have to ask for additional help, and, have to ask for that higher level of care. But just understand that everyone's in some form or another dealing with elder care issues somewhere in their family. And Paul's one way to handle it. It's not every way. Not everyone can have someone live with them in their home. But boy, I sure admire the way he handled things. And boy, he's well spoken. So I really really enjoyed this one a lot.
Absolutely. And again, there's resources out there. He mentioned alz.org, a wonderful resource to get you started on, okay, we have this diagnosis in my family. Where do we start? Where do we go? That sort of thing. And then the walk to End Alzheimer's. I love that Edward Jones is a huge provider with that. They've been doing that for close to 10 years now. And that walk is coming up here on September the 27th. And so we're really excited to be a part of that and help raise awareness and hopefully find a cure one day.
So look in the show notes. We'll have links to everything. And please, if you can, try to contribute in any way you can, whether that's volunteering or donating or coming and walking.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
And we'd love to stay connected. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and on Instagram at In Good Company Elder Care Podcast.
You can also find us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at IGC Pod, and on TikTok at IGC Elder Care Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to In Good Company Elder Care in Your Backyard. I'm John Ray, and I've been joined by my amazing co-host, Spencer Ernst. Special thanks to our executive producer, Alex Wallace, for helping bring this show to life. Until next time, take care, and remember, you are always in good company.